All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are reacting to should the Saints blow it up and hit the reset by Off the Bench 1045. We react to their videos every week. This is after the Saints-Steelers debacle. Okay, so I'm excited for this. Can't wait. Let's get right into it. Let's not mess about.
Bad NFL teams, yes. Right? Like both teams are bad. It kind of reminded me, Jake, of the analogy that popped immediately in my head. I felt like I was at a bar maybe or at a restaurant and I was watching two obese people fight like right after though they've eaten multiple links of boudin. So they're feeling like extra greasy and extra stuffed up, just awful.
Let me say this about Pittsburgh. So I'll obviously watch the game, and sorry if y'all hear anything. It is absolutely pouring in New Orleans right now and freezing and pouring. Bad combination. I'll say this about Pittsburgh. I thought, we talked about it in the preview, I thought Pittsburgh was the better play as far as like a betting play. I thought them coming off of the bye. I thought the Saints on a short rest, having to travel. And I'll tell you this. I actually thought Pittsburgh called, I know Matt Canada gets a lot of flack. I thought Pittsburgh called a pretty good game. They protected Kenny Pickett. They made him look pretty good. He moved around a little bit of RPO. They were pretty creative. They were safe. I'll say that. I mean, I think at one point he had like 11 completions for 98 yards or something. I mean, he was very safe, but the offense had a good little creative pulse to it. I thought what Pittsburgh was doing was pretty much what the Saints should be doing. And the Saints predictably had absolutely zero scheme, zero game plan, nothing. I mean, if they were a horse, they would have shot them. I mean, if they were a horse, they would have shot the Saints right on the track. They would have put it down because it was lifeless. It was spineless. I say this every single week. How is it a 10-10 game at halftime and your best player on the field ends the game with 8 carries and 3 receptions? How is Alvin Kamara getting 11 touches? How is Taysom Hill getting 2 touches? How is that happening? How is that the game plan?
To watch. And the Saints, horribly enough, were the worst team out of the two. I mean, think about this for a second. You're playing a rookie quarterback. You sack him 6 times. The Steelers missed 2 field goals, and you were never even in the game. Never in the game.
They were in the game at halftime. At halftime, they were in the game. And I think they got the ball in the second half. I'm pretty sure they scored and got the ball, or were getting the ball to start the second half. So at that point, there was a little bit of a lightning pop there. At that point, I was like, well, maybe the Saints are going to win this battle of ineptitude. And man, he talked about Pittsburgh missing those kicks. Those were a couple of snap hooks into the woods. That's when if you're playing golf and you hit those shots, you are asking for a breakfast ball. Those kicks were terrible.
When you sacked a rookie quarterback 6 times and they missed 2 field goals. And I said at the beginning of the show, I just don't even think there's a single position group to be excited about or feel good about on this team right now. I mean, I know Chris Olave is good and young for sure, and Alvin Kamara is good, but I mean, yesterday the Saints 186 total yards, 29 rushing yards.
Terrible. I mean, like, I agree that there's not a lot to be excited about as far as, you know, the players or position groups or however he wants to phrase it or any of that stuff. And we talked about that before. But they are, I mean, this is a ghost ship. Like, this is dead team walking, and you can feel it and you can see it with the players. I mean, I hate to say that because I'm not in the locker room, I'm not on the field. I don't, you know, I'm just guessing. But they know. Everyone has to know that this is a road to nowhere. Like, Dennis Allen, I mean, I don't know how many more weeks I can just say the same thing, but he is so in over his head. I mean, it is the exact same thing as what happened in Oakland. Exact same thing. I mean, it's just you can tell it ain't for him. It ain't for him. And people are shitting on Andy Dalton, and you're hearing the Jameis Andy thing. And I tweeted this out, but you can rotate Andy. You can start Andy this week, Jameis next week, Bobby Hebert the next week, Kerry Collins the next week, Aaron Brooks the next week, and then end the season with Drew Brees, and it's not going to matter. Like, it's not. That's where this team is right now, is that it just doesn't matter. because the team has nothing. Like the players need a scheme. Players need something. They need a reason to be doing what they're doing. They need plays. They need a game plan. The Saints just don't have any of that. Like it honestly, it looks like the Saints showed up to the stadium that day, like that morning. That was the first time they all saw each other. They got to the stadium, put their uniforms on, and then they just started playing. That was it. There was no like rhyme or reason to anything. There was nothing. It was just like whatever happens. We'll kind of whip the ball around a little bit for a couple hours, and then we're going to head back to New Orleans. It was the worst part of it. The worst part of it to me, it was just kind of boring. The Saints were just kind of boring. I mean, it was like I was watching a TV show and I couldn't wait for it to be over. I mean, you hate to say that, but that's what it looked like to me, and that's what it looked like the players felt. It looked like the players felt like, man, this is boring. Like, I want to get out of here. I want to get back. This sucks. And I mean, it does suck. Like, watching that product sucks. That face right there, that's the face that I had the entire time watching the Saints game.
10 penalties for 74 yards, 21 minutes time of possession, 3 of 12 on third down. This is getting into Ron Burgundy so bad I'm almost impressed with how bad. Like, it is truly hard when everybody are paid professionals on the offensive side of the ball that coach and play, Jake. It is hard to put together a box score this ineffective.
And the Saints have been really hurt. Like, they've been really injured this year. But, man, they had some offensive line issues this week. They had 2 people out, the offensive line we talked about in the preview. And I think that's why they couldn't run the ball as well. Or I know that's why they couldn't run the ball as well. But it doesn't make up for the game plan. Like, it doesn't make up for the culture. It doesn't explain any of that.
It was bad. It was bad on the TV copy. I'm sure it would be worse on the All-22. No?
No, hell no, dude. No, I ain't watching that. You kidding me?
Why would you do that to yourself a second time?
Well, not only that, but like there's nothing to carry for. Like I don't even know who's going to still be on this team. Everything about this year reeks of a full rebuild incoming.
It truly does. I mean,
I would love to get my hands on the All-22. So when I watch games in the stadium or in the Superdome, I like being where we sit because it's almost an All-22. And I can see plays develop better. I can see kind of personnel changes better. I can see all that stuff better. It is a different viewing experience. Like, I feel like I'm prepared to talk about a game way more when I'm actually in the Superdome, even though I've had 6, Crown of Sprites in me, versus when I'm watching it on the Fox broadcast. So I would love to get the All-22. Maybe not this game, but
on offense, like, ooh, Chris Olave still flashes, and so like your first round pick has worked out, which is great. But as we all know, like you have another first round pick in Trevor Penning that's not played this year. The offensive line, I mean, and you're banged up. You had some injuries. You're missing McCoy. I mean, Andrews Pete wouldn't have been much better than who played left guard in this game. But Lewis Kidd and Throckmorton it's been a revolving door there. It's been really, really bad. Obviously, like you've had some injuries in the receiver room, and it was good to see Juice back out there.
For
but
sure, injuries everywhere.
It's just.
I mean, guys.
Jarvis Landry did play well. He looked like a tight end. I mean, he's definitely slower and less explosive, but he did add something to the offense.
We have Andy Dalton throwing the ball to Kevin White with the game on the line in 2022.
That's fair.
Andy Dalton throwing the ball to Kevin White.
That's fair.
A receiver that still does not have a career touchdown.
Which is wild.
On 3rd and 10 with the game on the line in 2022. If that doesn't say, like that single sentence tells you how horribly awry this roster building has gone.
I don't understand how Loomis or anybody in the front office could have looked at this roster and been like, yeah, this roster can compete in the NFC South. Yeah, this roster can go to the playoffs. Yeah, no doubt. Like this looks good. Let's rock and roll. And it's different if you're Houston, right? If you're a team that's just going to be bad, a team that's used to being bad, a team that's not even trying to be competitive. This is the Saints. This is a team that a couple years ago was trying to go to the Super Bowl. And a lot of those pieces are here. I mean, this is a team where there should be too much talent on this team to fail, but they outfitted it with the most important positions of quarterback, coach, offensive coordinator, who shouldn't be in the league much less starting or a head coach or an offensive coordinator / play caller. I mean, I just don't see, and I know Jameis was a starter, but it doesn't matter. Like, I don't understand how you can enter the season, look around, and say, all right, the Bucs have Tom Brady. Who can we compete? Who can we compete with to win the division? Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton. Like, I understand that the wide receiver core, if you're going into the season, you're like, well, it's Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, and Jarvis Landry. That sounds pretty good, right? I understand there have been injuries there. I understand Kevin White, Keith Kirkwood, people like that have to play right now. So I understand that. But I don't understand how you can enter a 17-game season and you're deciding we're gonna roll the dice with a Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton combo. I mean, at least Carolina tried, right? At least they tried with Baker Mayfield and it didn't work out. At least that happened. I'm all for that. I'm all for if you're like, you know what, we're gonna take a shot here. Whatever, Daniel Jones was cut by the Giants. We're going to take a shot and see if we can get some magic. And it didn't work out. Fine. But to just be this complacent, to be this flaccid, to where you're just like, yeah, we'll go with Jameis. Yeah, that sounds good. That'll for sure get us where we need to be. It's just that I can't imagine what the conversations were like building this roster, entering the season, knowing how much of a feverish fan base this is, and handing over the keys to Jameis and Andy Dalton.
What happened to Paulson Adebo as well?
I don't know.
Did the Monstars come take his talent?
Yeah.
He was so good last year. Now, anytime you become a piece to...
It's the same shit. Like, it's the same shit where Adebo was, this happens all the time, where a player is good, but then because of circumstances, all of a sudden they're, instead of being the third cornerback or the second safety, or they're covering the fourth receiver because of injuries and whatever else, they're all of a sudden covering the number one guy. I mean, all of us, like, that happened. I remember in Green Bay, that happened when Jordy Nelson went down and Randall Cobb had to be the number one. Turns out he was a terrible number one. And he thrived in the slot. He thrived on the weaker secondary. But when it was, he was matched up with the number one, he wasn't as good. I feel like a lot of the Saints are going through that right now, where these wide receivers, like, Keith Kirkwood or Marquez Callaway, is a lot of the time being covered by their second best cornerback. They shouldn't be doing that. I mean, Chris Harris was covering DeAndre Hopkins in the Cardinals game. Of course he's going to get shredded. He's a practice squad player. He shouldn't be covering arguably the best receiver in the NFL. I think that's a lot of those issues.
To becoming the man, it's always a different challenge, and can you handle that? And with Lattimore out, that's what's had to happen. Yesterday he played 84 snaps. He graded out at 40%.
Wasn't good.
And
nobody was good. Like, there's no way anyone graded well yesterday. I don't look at PFF, which usually Pro Football Focus will pump out the grades. I don't look at that, but I would imagine the entire roster graded poorly, even if we were grading on a curve.
That's been the norm.
That's how Kevin White made the team. Cooking Paulson and Debo in practice. Oh, man.
That's not funny, but it is. Maybe you're onto something. It's I don't even know really what to say about the defensive backfield. And it just, Alontae Taylor, who I do think will be a good pro, he was 32.1% yesterday.
Yeah.
And it just, when you trade a piece like CD Deuce because you think you have what you need, and look, I know Marcus May was out, he had an illness, but still, it doesn't matter. You traded that for a bag of Skittles.
Front office is, the front office.
The Gardner Johnson trade we've covered, I think they were put between a rock and a hard place. They did what they felt like they had to do so that he didn't sit out the season. Looking back now, I think that the big contention with that trade is that they didn't get enough for him. They didn't get enough back for him. They traded away a really good defensive back for virtually nothing. So, I can understand that part of it, but I just think there's such a bigger problem here that talking about Adebo and Gardner Johnson and Alontae Taylor, like I think if we had Sauce Gardner, the defensive rookie of the year, if we had him on this team, they still lose that game in Pittsburgh. This is a cultural issue. This is a much deeper issue than how Alontae Taylor is grading out.
maybe nobody's reputation has been shot quicker or harder than the Saints front office. Like every decision that Mickey Loomis has made since, I don't know, probably like a year now, maybe safer draft than Olave just feels awful.
I'll tell you this, though. It takes one right decision to erase all that stuff. Jim Irsay was absolutely laughed at for 7 straight days for hiring Jeff Saturday to be the coach. He wins. I haven't heard a single person today laughing at Jim Irsay. So Loomis may make all these terrible decisions. He makes one good decision in the offseason, a la going and getting Drew Brees, a la Sean. I'm talking about like historical changes that change the franchise. Going and getting a Sean Payton, getting a Drew Brees, the Colts getting an Andrew Luck, getting a Peyton Manning. When you do stuff like that, it erases all that other stuff. If we draft the next whoever, the next Patrick Mahomes, no one's going to be talking about, man, I wonder, you remember when we gave up Gardner Johnson for a couple of 4th round picks? That's the beauty of this league. If you're proactive, it is one move away. The question is, will Loomis even attempt it? Like that, you got to attempt the moves.
Just bad, but awful. Now, the thing is, look, I understand injuries come into play, and let's discuss that because coming up next, I think there's 2 conversations to be had. First off, like a lot of the Twitter streets are saying, smell that? Kind of smells like SVG, okay? And that's not just because I didn't put on my deodorant this morning, although I do smell as well, and I apologize. But is Dennis Allen starting to smell like Stan Van Gundy a bit? We'll talk about that, and then do you go back to Jameis Winston next here?
I'll answer 2 questions, or I'll answer both questions. There's no reason to fire Dennis Allen right now. I desperately want his ass fired at the end of the season, but there's no reason to fire him now because you have Pete Carmichael. Like who's going to be the head coach of the Saints? I mean, unless you want to go full Jeff Saturday and just get a substitute teacher and just go get somebody. I joked about it last week, but go get Bobby Hebert, whatever, and just have some guy back there rah-rahing, and you just do that, and maybe you inject some fun into it. If you want to do that, whatever. But as far as like firing him, I don't really see a reason to do it. I think it's a ghost ship, man. It's just a dead man walking. Look. You're just going to have to ride out the rest of the season. You're going to have to ride out the rest of the season. What should be being done now is you should be trying to figure out who you want to be the coach next year. What's your plan? Like, are you looking at coordinators? Are you looking around the league? Are you looking in college? Are you looking at a coach who's not coaching right now, Sean Payton? What are you trying to do? And then figure out what is your rebuilding plan. Are you going to rebuild in the offseason through trade and free agency? Or are you going to try and move into the draft? Or is there someone late in the draft that you want to utilize? I mean, like, those are the conversations you should be having. The conversations of Jameis or Andy or Dennis Allen or fire Dennis Allen right now, like those are doing nothing. Absolutely nothing. I mean, I blows my mind that people are still talking about Jameis and Andy. These 2 guys suck. These 2 guys cannot start in the NFL. They are not starting quarterbacks. I don't care which one is starting. If one is a C and one's a D minus, or they're both C pluses, it's the same shit. Like, if you switch to Jameis, who cares? What do you think is going to happen? The people who I just don't understand that how we're this far into the season and we've been this bad and the offense is this terrible with no creativity, no play calling, no scheme, and people come out of the game and they say, well, maybe we should give Jameis a shot. What? We already know what's going to happen with Jameis. The same thing that's happening with Dalton. Neither one of these 2 had the capabilities to fix the problem of this season. Flip a coin. Do a Powerball. Sell tickets, sell raffle tickets at gas stations, and then whoever wins that week can pick the quarterback. Whatever. But you're wasting your time if you think that is what's wrong with this team. Dennis Allen, as far as right now, I saw a GoFundMe today. People in New Orleans here are trying to force him out. I don't care one way or the other as far as if you fire him now, as long as you fire him before next season. He better not be coaching next season.
Where do the Saints go from here? Because they've had this window that's been open for so long, and we talked about it last week. Was there times that it almost closed? A couple 7-9? Yeah, it almost did, but it never did fully close. And now, T-Bob.
Well, when you have a Drew Brees, the window's never closed, just like the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers, as bad as the Buccaneers have been, their window is never closed as long as Tom Brady's there. The Packers are terrible, but they have Aaron Rodgers. Their window's not closed. The Saints, there is no window. Unless a very drastic move is made and we bring in a MVP level quarterback, or totally rebuild through some crazy free agent. Now, I've talked about Lamar Jackson on here. I've talked about Sean Payton coming back on here. I've talked about Tom Brady linking up with Peyton in New Orleans. Like, there's crazy options to think about. Those are insane. And if those happen, yeah, maybe the window is reopened. But as far as I'm concerned, you are in a rebuild, because I don't honestly think they're going to go try and get Lamar Jackson, a Lamar Jackson free agent signing, Greg Roman package deal. I don't think they're going to go get Sean Payton and then Tom Brady's going to, come. I don't think it's going to happen. So the realistic options are you just rebuild.
It's slammed shut.
So I would ask you this, because you know the NFL far, far, far better than I do. I understand that Dennis Allen has got dealt a horrible card with these.
No, he really, the injuries have been bad, but everyone has injuries. It's the NFL. We're all day to day. So I hate that. I hate that excuse. That does not make up for the execution. Can be up for injury. If you can see that the players just aren't capable of executing, then it's like, okay, maybe the injuries are a thing. But the scheme, the game plan, all that stuff, that's not injury. That's Dennis Allen.
These injuries. But I'm kind of, we asked the question, is he starting to feel like Stan Van Gundy? Should this be a one and done? I am starting to lean towards yes, the worse it gets, because I'm not sure that I even think that they're performing well within the context of those injuries. Like, I feel like he's supposed to be a defensive master, and he's been really good on that side of the ball. They should be a bit better defensively.
He can't be, because he's too busy being the head coach. That's the problem with these coordinators. That's why coordinators fail. Josh McDaniels is a great example of it right now in Vegas. If when Josh McDaniels gets fired in Vegas, I would love to have Josh McDaniels as the offensive coordinator for the Saints. I think he's a brilliant offensive coordinator. He is not a head coach. That's okay. I don't know why in the NFL we've got to where coordinators have to be head coaches, and if they can't do that, they're terrible. Todd Bowles is another great example. Todd Bowles is a brilliant, maybe the most brilliant defensive coordinator in the NFL. He is one of the worst head coaches in the NFL. He should just take a step back, go back to the defense, and lead the head coaching to other people. Dennis Allen's the same way. Dennis Allen, I'd be fine. I would be fine if we hired Sean Payton and Dennis Allen stayed on the staff and went back to defensive coordinator. But that never happens anymore. For some reason, it's all or nothing. I think coordinators should be able to go back to where they came from, back to where they were good at, and instead of just having to all of a sudden graduate to this head coaching thing.
I don't care how many. Well, I guess injuries do play a part of maybe you're playing guys that don't normally play, but 10 penalties for 74 yards is inexcusable. Kind of waffling back and forth between the quarterbacks here. It's just, I guess it's tough for me. Like, Jake, I don't know. Okay, so what do you think? Like, within the context, the extreme amount of injuries that the Saints have, is Dennis Allen performing well, or is it just like it is, or is he doing badly even considering all?
He is doing terribly. Again, I don't understand how this is a conversation. It's been like this for weeks. I have said this for weeks, to fire Dennis Allen, or that the writing's on the wall that he should be fired. He cannot do the job. He has not shown even the minimum qualifications to do the job. And by the qualifications, I mean, what have you seen this year in 10 weeks? What, at any point, what have you seen where you're like, maybe there's something there? I don't think it, and maybe it's just me, but I think with quarterbacks, coaches, running backs, I really, anyone, I think you can just tell who's got something that maybe they need to develop, who's got, who's good, or who just flat out isn't there. Like, I'm trying to think of a quarterback right now, but you can just tell some people come in and you watch them and it's like, yeah, this ain't gonna work. Like he just doesn't have doesn't have what he needs to, can't put it together. The game's too fast for him. We need to go ahead and move on. I'll never understand the whole like wait 2-3 years to determine, give someone all this extended time. He's shit.
Yeah, injuries are part of the NFL. No one is ever going to allow you to use injuries as an excuse in the NFL. They're just not. For
Everyone's
whatever
hurt.
reason you want to throw out there, they're just not going.
Great example, the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans this week, or this past weekend, yesterday, they were injured. Their best players were injured on the defensive side. They just played Kansas City in overtime, lost, had 90 plays on the defensive side of the ball, played Denver coming off of the bye. And what they do? They won 17-10. Why? Because Mike Vrabel is a hell of a coach. They had so many injuries. They had like 5 injuries. Man, it is popping lightning right now. They had like 5 injuries. Who cares? Everyone's hurt. Everyone's injured.
And you got to find a way. And you can make moves. You can bring in players. It's not like college. So any team I've ever been a part of, when you tried to use injuries, nobody was having that conversation.
Okay. Yeah.
But they have. They certainly had those. But you're going to look back and you're going to see that in his career, Dennis Allen's 11-34 as a head coach.
And that's the problem, is that when these struggles come, the same way that Josh McDaniels does, his old record starts to loom very large, and it's inescapable. It's inescapable, and it's hard to feel like he.
I brought him up 5 minutes ago. Josh McDaniels is a great example. He is not a head coach. He's already tried this once. Now he's trying it again. The Raiders were a 10-win team. They were a playoff team last year. And he's got them losing every single game in every single fashion. They blow 17-point leads sometimes. They just get blown out sometimes. They're losing to good teams. They're losing to bad teams. It's obvious that he is not a head coach. That's fine. He's a great coordinator. Go back to being a coordinator. Nathaniel Hackett for Denver. He ain't a head coach. It took me literally one game. I made a video on this channel after he blew that game against Seattle. And I told y'all, he's not a head coach. This ain't going to work. If he can't do that math, it ain't for him.
He is the guy that today, at least, that you should continue with moving forward. And even get down to like Pete Carmichael. It is the whole staff, right? Like,
get
Pete
rid
Carmichael,
of his ass.
How are you going to have a 3rd and 1 and a 4th and 1 with the game on the line?
Oh my God, this play combo. I actually deleted this from my brain. I swear I almost had a stroke when this happened. He's talking about the end of the game whenever 3rd and 1 we go Kamara, and then we go hurry up Andy Dalton sneak on 4th and 1, and we get stopped.
And Taysom Hill's not in the game for either snap.
And then
you try QB sneak with Andy Dalton.
It makes no sense with the usage of a player like that. But like Taysom's not just the story, obviously, but it's a piece of it. Like what's going on?
It's like 7 yards a carry.
Yes, and you have and just even the threat, T-Bob.
Yes.
This is very validating for me because obviously I didn't play in the league. Jacob Hester played in the league. T-Bob knows the game. They know football, right? So to hear them, granted, 3 weeks after I said it, but to hear them saying, you know what, Pete Carmichael is not using these players the way he should be using them. Dennis Allen is not using these players the way they should be used. I mean, you should be able to point at, like, I'll give Lovie Smith this, and I shit on Lovie Smith all the time. I'll give him this. He knows Dameon Pierce is his best player, and he runs Dameon Pierce 30 times a game. I'll give him that. It would be insane if the Texans, as devoid of talent as they are, if Lovey was given Dameon Pierce 8 carries a game. Because then it's like, what the hell are you doing? You're bad and you won't use your best players? And that's what the Saints are doing. It was 10-10 at halftime. The Saints are getting the ball. The best player on the field, arguably, Alvin Kamara, ends the game with 8 carries, 3 catches. Taysom Hill, I believe 1 carry or 2 carries, 1 pass, something like that. I understand if you have your entire team and you're throwing the ball to Michael Thomas and Chris Olave and Jarvis Landry and Mark Ingram's running the ball some and whatever. Why are you wasting time getting touches to everyone else on the field, most of which are practice squad players, instead of your best players? That is coaching malpractice.
Even if you run with the running back, but Taysom's the one that hands it off, he gives you the threat. The defense has to worry about something else, and it doesn't happen. It's like, in fact, it's like he had the 4 touchdown game. It's like, whoa, that's a little too good. Let's don't do that anymore.
I made a whole ass TikTok about that. I made a whole clip. It's on my Twitter. Let's look at Taysom. 9 carries for 112 yards, 3 touchdowns. And let's look after that. 5 attempts. All right, immediately drops. Next game, drops even further. 3 attempts. So we go from 9 attempts, his biggest game of the year, 112 yards, 3 touchdowns. What do they immediately do? Take the ball out of his hands. Immediately take the ball away from him. And then they double down and do it again. It seems to be that Carmichael and Allen are trying to not succeed. I made a whole clip video about that. A whole clip of how something good happens. Taysom's 4 touchdown game was the exact thing that this might be a situation. I think I might have tweeted that at them. These guys cite me. This might be a situation they need to cite the source. Because in that clip, I said, look, Taysom had 4 touchdowns. Ever since then, his usage has dropped every single game. We can pull it up right now. Let's pull it up right now because I know exactly what it is. We're going to go all over the place here. That's how ESPN rolls. If we go to the Saints, if we go to the 4 touchdown game was the Seahawks, I think. Yeah, it was the Seahawks. All right, so after the Seahawks, let's look at Taysom. All right, let's go to Taysom stats, game log, Seahawks. All right, 9 carries. Since then, 5, 3, 4. Oh, it's the other way. Hold up. Since then, 5, 3. He did have 10 here against Vegas. 1, 3. I mean, it's nuts. It's crazy. Since he explodes here, since this, he has not had a touchdown. I mean, it's just you can see the usage. You can see the problems with the design, the scheme, the planning.
It doesn't. There's a lot of things that don't make sense, and it's on all 3 phases. And when you have a situation like this, you take a look at it. If you're management, and you're like, do I try to make it happen? Do I continue because I'm the one that made these moves? Do I continue to try to force it, or do we just say, you know what?
Avoid the sunken cost fallacy.
We just gotta blow it up.
Yeah, I think, and what sucks about that is, again, the front office went from feeling good about them to they have completely evaporated in goodwill in a matter of a few months. I would say it feels like it's time to blow it up.
Let's talk about a blow up. Well, I'll let them keep going, but then we're going to get into the blow up.
Say, let Demario Davis go chase rings. Let Cam Jordan go chase rings. They've been incredible Saints. And if they want to stay, hell yes. But, they deserve better. The salty vets on this team deserve better that have been here for a while.
In the future, T-Bob, not to cut you off there, but the future of it too, not having a first-round pick, that's, man, it makes you a little nervous here. How are you going to find your quarterback? Because Andy Dalton is certainly not your quarterback. Jameis is not going to be your quarterback of the future. Jameis is not going to be that's. Andy Dalton is certainly not your quarterback.
Sean Payton?
Here, how are you going to find your quarterback? Because Andy Dalton is.
I mean, look, hey, guys, I appreciate it. I appreciate y'all watching the channel. I appreciate y'all watching the videos. I appreciate all that stuff. Give me a shout out. Give me a shout out. Give me a call. I'll come on the show. I mean, now I've been screaming about the Peyton thing. I've been screaming about the Taysom stuff, the usage. This is getting unbelievable now.
Certainly not your quarterback. Jameis is not going to be your quarterback of the future. Now, you can go sign a free agent quarterback, and the list actually is.
If he says Lamar Jackson, I'm driving to Baton Rouge. I'm just gonna have to be on the show. I'm gonna force myself onto the show.
Better than it typically is as far as guys that would be starters in this next quarterback class. But you just we know that the salary cap and you're up against it. I just don't know where you start. A lot of people in chat probably think you start with Dennis Allen.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You do.
Yeah, that is the accepted answer today. There's a
Let me explain this blow up, okay? This is how this is going to have to work. You can blow up one of two ways, or you can move forward a couple different ways. First way is short term. You can say, I want to be competitive next year. I want to be competitive. So we need to try and keep the core unit of good players, Lattimore, Kamara, Michael Thomas, players like that. And you say, I need to go make a splash, a la Matt Stafford going to the Rams, Tom Brady going to the Bucks. You go determine the best quarterback that you can get, whether it's free agency or a trade, anything like that. Players coming off their deals, whatever. You go get that player. For example, San Francisco 49ers. They have a Jimmy Garoppolo problem. They have Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance. You can call them and say, hey, which one do you want to deal us? Right? Lamar Jackson, I've mentioned him. He wants a new deal. You can call the Ravens, call Lamar, call his agent, however you want to do it. There's options, okay? The Patriots. Now, I don't think this is a real option, but earlier in the season, people were talking about it. Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones. New England, do y'all want to move off Bailey Zappi? Do you want to move off or move on to Bailey Zappi? We will take Mac Jones off your hands. There's options, right? Before Justin Fields went nuts, we talked about it here as well. I thought the front office may move off Justin Fields. Chicago, what can we do to help you out, right? There's options, okay? You can do that. Or you can say, we cannot do that. We do not have the play. We cannot get the players. We cannot do that. So we have to blow it up. We have to make like a 5-year plan where we ship everything. Ship Marshawn Lattimore, Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, Michael Thomas. Get all that off the books. We're going to keep young players, Chris Olave, and we're going to start rebuilding through the draft because you're going to trade all those players away for picks. We're going to start rebuilding through the draft, and this is going to take a while. This is going to take 3 to 5 years to get back to where we're competitive. If you want to do that, blow it up. In both instances, though, you cannot do that without knowing who your leader is, without knowing your scheme, without knowing your system, right? If your coach wants a Matt Stafford type quarterback, you're not going to go get Lamar Jackson. If your coach wants a Lamar Jackson, you ain't going to go get Jimmy Garoppolo, right? So the first thing you have to do, regardless of which one of those tracks you go on, the first thing you have to do is figure out who the coach is, figure out who the leader is, figure out who's going to be leading the clubhouse. That is number one. And Carmichael's got to go too, because he is doing nothing. So Allen, Carmichael, gone. Step one, head coach, offensive coordinator. Fire the whole staff. I don't give a shit. Step one, coaching staff. And then you can determine how you want to rebuild.
We'll talk to Nick Underhill about it tomorrow. Mike Tribble and Jameis Winston had a really good sit down on New Orleans on football where Jameis is kind of talking about how like he feels like maybe he shouldn't have pushed himself the manner that he did in that Tampa game after he had broken his back week 1, saying that, he wanted to play even though he was hurt. And then obviously it led to bad film. And then that when the Saints were like, okay, look, we're going to shut you down so you get healthy, that he said, like, basically, like, okay, but, if the offense gets rolling, I don't want to not have another chance to go back on the field. They said that wouldn't happen. The offense got rolling. That has happened. But, look, man, my whole deal with this is I don't think that Jameis is going to fix this team, right?
He's not. I just said that.
And I don't think that you've seen anything to say that he is the long-term answer.
He's not.
But Andy Dalton's certainly not the long-term answer. And maybe even less so than Jameis. Like, if a healthy Jameis Winston would play really well, maybe he would feel better about him for a couple more years. But even beyond that, it's simply like, look, if you're playing bad, give the other guy a shot, okay?
No problem with playing Jameis. But you have to know both are gone. It's like you're choosing between two terrible options. So whatever you do in the short term, who cares? The season's over, all right? The season is finito. It's done. This roster, not good. So if right now you want to play Jameis for a few games, be my guest. No one's holding on to Andy Dalton. It was for sure the right move to get off of Jameis and go to Andy. Jameis wasn't healthy. The offense was sputtering. We lost to Carolina. Andy had the offense rolling. And I'm not saying it was Andy, but the offense was moving. The offense was doing things. It did look better. And then it all fell apart. That's fine. It was the right decision to make in that moment, and now it's gone sour. So go back to Jameis. Who cares? And if Jameis throws 3 picks, go back to Andy. And then if Andy sucks in 3 games, go back to Jameis. And then at the end of the year, put all their shit in a suitcase and send them up the road.
And Dalton was playing good. Dalton's playing bad now. They basically have the exact same stats on the year.
Yeah.
If Jameis is telling me he's healthy, I'd give him another shot. I don't expect it to make a great difference, but like,
who cares?
I will say this, Jake. If DA does not start Jameis next week,
my man's checking his watch. What a power move. Well, look, we discussed it all. Again, always enjoy the videos. I appreciate them, obviously, citing a lot of my sources here. Always glad to be helpful for the boys. But thank you for watching this. Let me know in the comments below what you think as a Saints fan, or what you think the Saints should do moving forward. It starts with Dennis Allen. So let's just pretend like you fired Dennis Allen. Who do you want to be the head coach of the Saints next year? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. We'll be breaking down more reaction videos to this unbelievable Steelers-Saints game and what the future of the Saints is. Thank you for watching.